So your D&D group has failed you again, and you're stuck at home all by yourself. Nothing to scratch that TTRPG itch. Some video games, maybe? No, you've played all those to death, and besides, just starting one of them can take even longer than a D&D session. You'll want to be there all night. How about a movie? Yeah, sit back and chill on the couch. Just enjoy a good flick. But which movie? How about one that involves a favorite tabletop game of ours? Help us satisfy that D&D fix. If you're looking for some suggestions, maybe I can help. Now, we're not talking about actual D&D movies. You've probably already seen the most recent one, Honor Amongst Thieves. And if you haven't, why are you watching this stupid thing? Go watch that instead. As for the others, there's probably better uses of your time. This won't be a best of list or use some kind of a ranking system. We're going to break it down by category. Different flavors of D&D-ish movies. And we'll start with a film about D&D. The Gamers, Dorkness Rising. When I say this 2008 film is a B movie, think B-. Temper your expectations. But it's not a bad thing. This movie is hilarious. It's technically a sequel, but you don't need to have seen the original. The film is about a group of friends playing a game of D&D. The DM is trying to perfect his story so he can publish it. But the players are not being very helpful with all their ignoring the story and murdering everyone. And because of that, the party gets TPK'd. So they try again and try to increase their chances of success by bringing in a new player, one of the other players' ex-girlfriends, who plays the character Daphne, the token, not taken seriously spear fighter, who turns out to be pretty good at the game, but wants to more focus on the story. There's the DM who also plays Sir Osric the Paladin, a DM PC who's there to keep the players on track, but unfortunately has a terrible intelligence and the players are constantly outwitting him. Brother Silence, the monk, is the rules lawyer of the group, and kind of a dick, and a serious murder hobo. There's Luster, the sorceress, who is played by a guy and is constantly forgetting that he's playing a female. And then there's Flynn the Fine. You ever have that player at the table who just always wants to play the same character over and over again? Well, that's this guy who loves playing simple fighters. But now he's decided to play something different. A stereotypical, womanizing bard. Now, I don't know if you remember bards from 3rd edition, which is what they're playing. They were not the easiest class to play and were a bit squishy. Well, this player is prepared for that, as he has a stack of character sheets of the exact same character that he goes through one after the other as he just keeps dying. It's as hilarious as it sounds. Give this movie a try. Let's move on from a movie that is about D&D to one that references it just a bit. That's where the Knights of Badassdom comes into play. And you know, the professional sounding title like that, it must be Oscar worthy. But no, seriously, this 2013 movie has a pretty interesting cast. Ryan Quanten from True Blood, comedian Steve Zahn, nerd legend Summer Glau, and even Tyrion Lannister himself, Peter Dinklage. It might be a B movie, but it's got some chops. The movie is about a metal musician / mechanic named Joe who gets dumped by his longtime girlfriend. His two friends, Hung and Eric, try to comfort him. They're his housemates and they all used to play D&D together, but Joe doesn't do that anymore, and Hung and Eric have moved on to more advanced gaming. LARP, live action roleplay. So what do they do to cheer up their heartbroken buddy? Well, they kidnap him and take him to one of their LARPing events, of course. Yeah, he's resistant at first, but the wiles of the enchanting Gwen, another player, soften him up. Unfortunately, the esteemed sorcerer Eric has brought a new spell book to add to his costume. But it's not a prop, and they accidentally summon a succubus in the guise of Joe's ex-girlfriend, Beth, who then goes on a rampage and starts murdering all the helpless LARPers. This film is hilarious and surprisingly gory, with pretty good practical effects. I mean, it has all sorts of weird stuff, from country bumpkin paintballers harassing the LARPers, to Peter Dinklage's wraith battling a demon, to the background of death metal. It's really weird, but definitely worth watching. Now let's move on to a D&D movie that never mentions D&D, but if you watch it, you know what's going on. And that is 2020 Pixar's animated movie Onward. And you would be forgiven for not remembering such a big budget movie from such a big studio because it came out right as the pandemic hit. Which was a shame because it had a pretty big cast with Tom Holland and Chris Pratt playing the lead brothers along with other voice actors, such as Julia Louis-Dreyfus. When I first saw the trailer for this movie, I didn't realize it had anything to do with D&D specifically. It just seemed like a fantasy movie with a modern twist. So like elves and centaurs taking the place of humans in a setting with all the normal modern trappings. Cars, TVs, phones, etc. But then I actually saw the movie and realized that D&D was everywhere. It just wasn't mentioned by name. The film centers around two elven brothers, Ian, the younger brother, who was just turning 16, and his older brother, Barley. They're looked after by their single mother, Laurel, with their father having passed some years ago. They receive a gift passed down from their deceased father, a staff. Now, Ian doesn't know what this is, but his brother Barley recognizes it as a magic staff. He knows this because he's a huge fan of the TTRPG Quests of Yore, D&D. But unlike D&D, which is a fantasy game, Quests of Yore is a historical game. See, the characters know that magic used to exist, but it's been supplanted by technology like ages ago. Along with the magic staff is a spell that would bring back their father from the dead for one day. And after some trial and error, Ian attempts to cast the spell, but only partially works. As in, they get their dad partially back, partially being the lower half. But Barley, ever the aspiring adventurer, has a solution. He decides that they should go on a quest, just like the days of old, to find the rare component for the spell and just try it again. And along the way, he would teach his little brother magic. And the quest is bonkers, to say the least. While dodging centaur police officers, a pixie biker gang, goblin pawn dealers, and rabid raccoon-like alicorns, there are also more D&D recognizable threats like dragons, sort of, and a certain dungeon-dwelling danger jello. You know what I'm saying. It's an old-fashioned D&D adventure mixed with a coming-of-age story, while also dragging around the lower half of their father, which is somehow adorable and not gross. Now let's move on to a film that is basically a D&D adventure. There are a lot of movies that would probably fill this role. D&D itself, adventure-wise, is modeled after Tolkien's The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, more of the former than the latter. And Tolkien's works themselves have roots in ancient myth. I'm thinking of, Dragon Slayer Sigurd, who sought the dragon Fafnir's hoard. There are a lot of movies that fit this bill. Dragon Slayer, even Star Wars. But I'm going to go with 1983's Krull, a cult classic. The story takes place in the world Krull that has been invaded by a powerful creature known only as the Beast, along with his army of armored slayers. So yeah, it's a fantasy setting with aliens invading. Weird. Two rival kingdoms promise their children to marriage to fulfill some prophecy. During the wedding, the princess Lissa is kidnapped by slayers and the prince Colwyn is injured. After being nursed back to health by the wise old man known as Ynir, he sets off on an adventure to save his future bride and defeat the beast who has taken to trying to get the princess to choose it as the husband. So Colwyn is out looking for the first MacGuffin, this cool spinning five-fingered blade thing called the Clay, to kill the beast with, which he actually finds pretty easily. Most of the challenge of the film is actually trying to find the beast's spaceship/fortress. It teleports to a random location, so that ends up being the adventure, finding out the location of the fortress's next jump. They consult a seer and his crystal ball, and when that doesn't work, they go to the MacGuffin swamp, and when that doesn't work, one of them goes to consult an oracle, who was apparently his ex. Awkward! She's also a spider lady oracle, so along the way, they meet a bunch of criminals that pledge their services to them, one of which includes a young Liam Neeson. There's a cyclops that protects them, a shapeshifter who can turn into a tiger, amongst other things, and is surprisingly adorable. The old seer we mentioned has his apprentice, giant spiders, spider ladies, all kinds of weird people. One interesting little fact about this movie is that the beast was originally supposed to be a dragon, which would have made this even more like a D&D campaign. It's got romance, a good adventuring party with interesting characters, magic, creepy monsters, and a whole lot of weird, cool stuff. I really like this movie. And finally, let's talk about D&D spoof movies. Yeah, a movie that makes fun of D&D and other similar genres. That's where the 2015 movie Dudes and Dragons comes in. Now, that's not to be confused with the Dungeon Dudes, very cool pair of Canadian D&D YouTubers. This wacky, freaky movie is a spoof on Dungeons and Dragons, fantasy tropes in general, and it's a surprising amount of Star Wars as well. It's got some interesting cast members too. Luke Perry is in it. James Marchers from Buffy the freaking Vampire Slayer plays the bad guy again. So the story is that the evil wizard Tinsley wants to marry the princess Enogard, but she's not having it. So the wizard unleashes the mighty dragon to terrorize the countryside, destroying anyone displaying signs of affection or love, until the princess will agree to marry him. So she sends out a call for dragon warriors, which was originally the title of this movie, to come to her aid, like Leia from Star Wars style. At the same time, the warrior Camelin wants to marry an elven princess, but his parents won't let him because it would forfeit some family's birthright or something. So he has to convince his rapscallion of an older brother, Ramicus, to marry first. And let's just say he's not the marrying type. But then the message from Enogard comes through, and Camelin realizes that maybe he can get his brother to go on the adventure to save this princess and marry her as a reward, which would allow him to marry his own elven princess. Oh, and important stuff like get rid of the dragon who's going around killing anyone who's hugging and kissing. Love-hating dragon. That's a new one on me. So the heroes go off on this adventure. The brothers, their idiot squire, an orc sidekick who pretty much carries them through the battle. He's OP as hell. Look, this is a B movie. Emphasis on the B. It is so ridiculous. This is a scene from the movie.
You promised to marry me while you plotted my death.
It was bound to fail. Love between blood is an abomination.
It is very common in some cultures.
That's the kind of humor we're going to have here. But if you like that sort of thing, then you're going to die laughing with this one. So there are some interesting choices for types of D&D movies and what you could watch to scratch that particular flavor of D&D itch that you might have. I'm sure I left out all kinds of D&D genres and movies with them. Tell me in the comments below what kind of films give you the D&D experience. And while you're down there, be sure to subscribe, ring the bell, smash that like button, check out our other videos over here. Till next time on Roleplay Culture.